quite simple, really. You lock up violent criminals who repeatedly victimise people in the community, then they're not in the community re-victimising people. It's as simple as that. Locking them up to make sure that they are not in our communities creating harm is what this government is committed to doing, because the people on the street have had enough. They've had enough of being victims. They have had enough of people like that member over there telling them that we don't need the New Zealand police, that we don't need any sort of law and order. We just let them all run loose. That's why we're in government and you're not. This government makes no apologies for holding people to account for bad behaviour. We do not believe that people going about doing whatever they want, when it's criminal, when it's violent, when it's taking other people's property, it's not right. And to say that we shouldn't invest in making sure that people are held accountable, we think on this side of the House is wrong. Because showing accountability actually can change attitudes. It can say to people, we don't accept the fact that you can come out here and take what you want that you didn't earn from people that have worked hard and there be no consequence. A consequence, if necessary, will be prison, especially if it's recidivist. And quite frankly, if people who are recidivist offenders, especially violent recidivist offenders, are not out in society creating more victims, but are in corrections, perhaps getting rehabilitated, then that also is a positive outcome.
The Acting Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government statements and actions?
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, absolutely, and in particular I stand by this government's policy of cutting red tape to make it easier for existing supermarket chains to expand and new ones to launch in New Zealand. Grocery prices are a great pain to many New Zealand households, and we need to encourage new investment and competition, because those are the things that result in more choices, more efficient supply chains and lower prices for families. When people are driving across the city just to shop at Costco, it shows that people do actually want more choice and that more investment can lead to lower prices. This government is resolutely in favour of attracting investment and innovation so that Kiwis can get a better deal.
Last week I announced that from the 25th of September, hundreds of food exporters will no longer need to apply for a special exemption from New Zealand law if their products meet the requirements of the country they are exporting to. Companies have missed opportunities to grab new markets overseas because of the time it takes to get an exemption, which means they can't respond quickly enough. This simple change will cut red tape, lower barriers to export and promote innovation for those getting out there and promoting New Zealand's primary products to the world.
Can the Prime Minister confirm that there are $7 billion of government-funded infrastructure projects that will be underway by Christmas? Precinct Property has just announced a $1 billion spend in the next 10 years on apartments in Auckland, and Simplicity is building 600 new build-to-rent apartments in Queenstown, and that some members need to look on the bright side of life.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I can confirm both of those things. It is absolutely correct that there is a stupendous amount of capital investment coming down the pipeline for New Zealand's construction sector, and it is also true that sometimes just putting a smile on it can actually in itself improve the circumstances. And one of the things that people have struggled through this winter, through this recession, need is some positivity and some positive leadership, because actually things are getting better. What the opposition are offering is just simple depression.
What feedback has he seen from students about their experience of moving to a charter school?
Mr. Speaker, a lot of it, and much of it quite touching. Students that have said, quote, I wasn't really a school person, saying that actually the experience has been life-changing. Students whose attendance was abysmal, in fact, sadly they weren't really attending, now some of the best attending students in the district. I've seen a trades-focused school, Busy Charter, in central Auckland, which is supporting students into vocational education through work placements and apprenticeships. These are the kinds of options that New Zealand children have been thirsting for, but for too long the providers and the suppliers of education have had their interests advanced before the interests of students by successive government policies.
I've seen a recent report which shows that in June 2025, the number of children and young people with serious and persistent offending behaviour is 14.6% lower than June 2023 baseline figure, and is nearly at the target of the 15% decrease we initially hoped to achieve by 2030. The number of serious and persistent youth offenders peaked in November 2023 at 1,126. It has fallen consistently since then, including a massive 40% decrease in Northland. It is likely that the wider government work has contributed to this reduction. We know that offending is often linked to underlying factors such as non-engagement in education. The work that Associate Education Minister David Seymour has done on school attendance has likely contributed to this reduction. This success also highlights the strong focus Oranga Tamariki and police have put on working more closely together.
For the first time in a long time, we have a government that has recognised that the middle is getting completely squeezed. And maybe I should give a little bit of a history lesson to the opposition around what has been happening in New Zealand. We have seen lower incomes rising time after time. We've had really big increases in the minimum wage. And yes, we've seen some upper wages increasing too. But the bulk of New Zealanders, the middle class, the mums and dads, haven't seen wage increases in 10 or so years. This is where it's really hurting everybody. We've seen high inflation. We've seen the cost of living going through the roof. And this bill aims to put some measures back to those that are getting up every day, getting out there, earning money. They've got their kids. They need to put them in some childcare because in today's day and age, both mum and dad do need to work to get ahead. So this is a step in the right direction. By lifting the thresholds and lowering the abatement, the government is finally recognising that middle-income families are actually feeling the squeeze too. And I'm really proud of that, because this government is focused on fixing what matters to New Zealanders.
On behalf of the Minister of Education, the government has decided to replace NCEA because we believe we can do better for all students, and that involves a more rigorous system of examination that ensures that students must learn the information in order to pass the test. Now, it is true that there is a range of perspective on the changes to NCEA, but this government utterly rejects the idea that somehow all Māori students are disadvantaged by a more rigorous examination system. That's the kind of thinking we need to get rid of. It is simply a fact that if you don't have the basic literacy, the basic numeracy, and the basic understanding of the world of science and history, then your ability to uphold anything, including Te Tiriti, is going to be greatly diminished. And that's why this government is focused on the simple idea of one teacher in one classroom with a knowledge-rich curriculum that is examined through proper examinations so that we are transferring knowledge from one generation to the next. And I hear the member opposite asking which knowledge. Well, the simple fact is that there are curricula being developed in Te Reo Māori and in English.
If the member's got a question, take a supplementary. Don't yell them across the House like that.
ACT, Mr Speaker, has been saying for years that councils need to stick to the basics: roads, rubbish, pipes. Ratepayers deserve our voice. Every dollar should count, not be wasted on slow zones, on raised crossings, cycleway vanity projects. They need to be focused on fixing what matters, Mr Speaker, and that's what we're doing here tonight.
Evidence has shown the absence of strong safeguarding measures has resulted in some adopted children being moved from their home countries into harmful home environments, both within New Zealand and other nations via New Zealand, where they are open to being abused, neglected. Slavery is an issue, open for sexual assault and physical assault. This is just unacceptable. Our current legal protections currently fail to avert that tragedy, and we just cannot allow this to continue. And this is why we find ourselves here, Madam Speaker, under urgency, urgently resolving the risk of harm to children and young people adopted overseas and sometimes brought to New Zealand and sometimes elsewhere. Preventing the risk of harm to children and young people is what matters most now, Madam Speaker. That is our responsibility, whether they are our child or not, and as a nation, we need to work together to make sure that our children are safe.
This is a government that gets out and listens to the people. It's a government that hears the stress that people are facing, and there is no question that construction is under pressure. There's no question about that. However, it is also true that we are moving through an economic cycle which began with a lockdown and a spending blowout, carried on with high interest rates, was followed by a recession and is now seeing a recovery. Mr. Speaker, I believe that it's the policies of this government that are based on saving money, spending it carefully like New Zealanders are forced to, cutting red tape and regulation and building our connections with the rest of the world, even as we build the infrastructure required for the next generation, will lead to a great success for this country and many, many more people, including our own citizens, choosing their long-term future in New Zealand. I would like to take just a moment to acknowledge the very strong feelings many New Zealanders have today after the passing of Charlie Kirk. To see somebody who was not elected lose their life because of violence when they were trying to promote the freedom to speak without violence is a bitter irony, but one that I hope will help people understand the difference between free speech and the right to receive ideas freely on the one hand and physically preventing them from doing so on the other, particularly at the point of a gun. It's a great shame that the House was not able to unite condemning political violence earlier because some parties refused to have such a motion put before the House.